then he will launch us. Thanks, Ed. He will take us into tonight's presentation, after which we shall go to Tarkwa Breman, where we are piloting this project. Chocolate has a name, and we have one of the farmers at Tarkwa Breman who's joined us this evening, who would also be sharing his story, pre-recorded, but he's here live with us, and he will have the opportunity to also introduce himself and share something with the community. So if you're ready, tonight is how Ghana got its cocoa. And I'm honored and pleased to welcome my brother and my friend, Leonard Opoku Agyemang, the son of a cocoa farmer, a theologian, a researcher, who is really pleased to share the space with us and present. Over to you, Leonard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adele, for that wonderful introduction. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Adele, and thank you, Joanna. And thank you to your cherish and other tribesmen and women who are on this great platform. It's really a privilege to be with you here. As Adele mentioned, my name is Leonard Opoku Agyemang, and I'm proud to say that I'm a son of a cocoa farmer, and I was born and bred in the cocoa growing area, and I'm proud of that heritage. Actually, I'm not only a son of a cocoa farmer, but I'm also a researcher. And for some time now, I have noted that cocoa is not only an agricultural phenomenon, it's actually connected to a wide range of experiences in Ghana and elsewhere. And tonight, my task is very simple: how Ghana got its cocoa. It's going to be a bit historical and going to deal with some historic documents, but I pray that as we journey together, we'll all find for ourselves how Ghana indeed got its cocoa. In fact, a lot has been said about Ghana's cocoa industry, and many people attribute cocoa to Tetteh Quarshie, who's also an illustrious son of the land. But today we'll find out for ourselves, apart from Tetteh Quarshie, did other people also contribute? Who was Tetteh Quarshie, and what was his contribution? So whom are we to credit for Ghana's cocoa industry and how far we have gotten into as a nation, and based on our contribution to the international community? And so tonight, our task is simple: how Ghana got its cocoa. Let me start by tracing the origin of cocoa, And let me start by saying one of my serious college mentors, by J.N. Manson, he once made an observation, and I would like to share this observation with you. He once said that words are full of history. Words are full of history, and account words not least among them. So this means that words are not only known for their linguistic value, but also their historical significance. So in Ghana, especially among the Akan people, they refer to cocoa as cocoa. Okay, cocoa. Etymologically, the Akan word cocoa is adopted with a shift of stress from the English cocoa. Cocoa was also derived from the Spanish form caco. So caco passed into English, but in English usage, caco has been turned inside out because of its similarity to coke, like coconut. So the history of cocoa is actually traced to Mexico, where the Aztecs made a delectable drink known as chocolate. I think it is from this word that we derive chocolate. And from the seeds of cacao, that is the Aztec's name for the cocoa tree. So cocoa first came to European attention when Cortes conquered Mexico in 1519 to 1521. So apart from making chocolate from the cocoa seeds, the Aztecs and the Mayans also of Central America, used cocoa as currency. Cocoa also featured prominently in the religious life of the Native Americans. Among other things, Hilary Christopher has examined the use of cocoa in the Mesoamerican region, noting the religious and ritual importance of cocoa among the pre-classic Maya. In Mayan cosmology, there is a divine father who is believed to care for all living creatures. Thus, animals and plants were sisters and brothers to the Mayans. In the light of this cosmological orientation, Simon Martins has made an observation, and I quote, "An ancient Maya had an abiding and intimate relationship with the natural world. All manner of trees, plants, leaves, flowers, fruits, and roots found a place in their simple system, and the flora that surrounded them, both wild and cultivated, were embedded in their spiritual outlook. The crops that fed and enriched them were especially charged with religious sentiments and took pivotal roles in their mythic narratives." So cocoa was not only one of such crops, but also it featured prominently in ancient Mayan theological thought. So by focusing on the arts and the writing of classic period, with forays into the post-classic and colonial eras, Martin establishes the place and centrality of cocoa in Mayan theology, highlighting fertility and sustenance, sacrifice and regeneration, embodiment, transformation as some of the significant pre-Columbian religious ideas that survive in traditional Mayan communities this day. So with cocoa being associated with this ancient kingdom or ancient nation, one may wonder how cocoa got its way into Ghana and for that matter, Africa. So we know that centuries later, cocoa finds a new home. Before I talk about that, let me share with you what cocoa means presently to Ghanaians. And we find out how we've journeyed so far onto the 21st century. In the 19th and 20th century, the story of cocoa no longer is bound to the Americas. Cocoa now finds a new home, and the new home now tropical Africa, West Africa in particular, where Ghana is located. Now, Cocoa Ghana, says one of Ghana's illustrious high life musicians, E.T. Mensah. By saying cocoa is Ghana, is interpreted to mean cocoa is Ghana. In other words, what E.T. Mensah is saying is that everything about Ghana is cocoa. So in 2018, the Cocoa Marketing Company Ghana Limited, a subsidiary of Ghana Cocoa Board, dedicated part of its calendar in celebrating Ghana's cocoa. The July page has a picture of bags of dried cocoa beans neatly sacked and sealed with the inscriptions. Each bag of cocoa carries the love, dedication, and fullness of the spirit of the Ghanaian people. The images and the words on each page of the calendar tell stories of the Ghanaian people, and these stories are inextricably tied to cocoa, life and thought in Ghana. These observations underscore a very important point, and that is, since its introduction, cocoa has occupied a key position in Ghana's economy, impacting every sphere of the Ghanaian society. M.R. Appiah summarizes this impact, and I would like to share what Appiah has to say before I move on the cocoa's journey in Ghana. So Appiah is saying that in spite of all the significant gains by other sectors of the economy in recent times, cocoa still continues to occupy a key position in Ghana's economy in terms of foreign exchange generation and domestic incomes, as well as being the major source of revenue for the provision of socio-economic infrastructure in the country. The industry also employs about 60% of the national agricultural labor force in the country. In fact, everybody in Ghana, one way or the other, depends on cocoa. It has been the lifeblood of this country for nearly a century, and it will continue to be so for a long time to come. To the farmer, it is the source of income for the upkeep of his family. The other stakeholders in cocoa industry, such as the licensed cocoa buying companies, depend on cocoa for survival. To the Minister of Finance and his deputies, it is a major source of foreign exchange for the country. The market woman is happy during Christmas, which coincides with cocoa harvesting season. In local parlance, there is a term known as mikoko aso, which means I am rich. The media, both local and foreign, regard as an important source of either good or bad news. Reports of smuggling of cocoa make headlines in local dailies. The industry is used by politicians as battleground to win political power. Increase or decrease in national cocoa production becomes political issue. I can keep adding to this list because in a sense, we will agree with the high life musician by saying that indeed, cocoa is Ghana. Cocoa is indeed Ghana, because life in Ghana is actually tied to cocoa. And for so many years, over a century, Ghana's life has been really shaped by cocoa. Now, from our peers' observation and from the others that I've cited earlier, it is quite obvious that the impact of cocoa in Ghana is huge. And this impact is being felt in every sphere of life in Ghana. So the question that remains now is, how did all this start? How did we get to where we are? Why did Ghana become the second largest producing cocoa? The narrative actually takes us far back to the 19th century. But before the 19th century, let me give a brief background so that at least you get a picture of what this actually means. Now, the British, as I said, the cocoa, the botanical name Tetteh Breman cocoa itself means that food for the gods. So the question is, how did this food, which belonged to the gods in a land far away from Ghana, actually became so much important here in Ghana? Now, cocoa crossed the Atlantic through the expansion of Western imperialism and Christian nation. The Portuguese were the first to arrive in 1471, and that marked the beginning of European presence on the Ghanaian coast. There were internal rivalries among European trading partners, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the English, and the others who joined the trade later. Initially, it was Portuguese who monopolized the whole of because they were the first to discover and they engaged in that. But their initial effort, actually, in terms of Christianity, I might say they did not really make a mark because Christianity was actually reduced to the coastal region. By somewhere in the 19th century, change came and there were more new religious revival movements that really sprang, and as a result of religious fervor and piety, new missionary movement emerged from Germany, England, Switzerland, and other places. And they all find their way in the West African sub-region, and to be precise, Ghana. And so from the 19th century onwards, they started embarking on very serious mission. And it was through this time that cocoa was introduced to Ghana by the efforts of many, especially the Basel missions. And let me put this on record. The Basel missions were the first to actually take Christianity to the interior part of Ghana. All other Christian missions were operating along the coast. And so they brought cocoa to the interior part, the Kwapim Ridge, and from there it spread to other parts of the country. And their played very significant role in the spread of the cocoa industry in Ghana. And I would like to share that story quite briefly. Now, if you look at the earliest attempt to grow cocoa in Ghana, we will say that all the initial attempts actually occurred or they took place in the 19th century. According to one of our illustrious scholars, K.H. Dixon, and so far that claim has not really been substantiated properly. He claimed that the earliest attempt actually took place at Elmina in 1800. That was where the earliest attempt was made. The Dutch experimented. They tried to cultivate cocoa in 1800. But that record has not been properly, because we don't really have much records to authenticate that particular claim. But this historian has actually made that claim. But apart from this earlier effort, which has been recorded, we know that the Basel Mission also made a lot of effort to cultivate cocoa in the Gold Coast. Now, the Basel Mission, through the instrumentality of their lay missionaries, who were all agriculturalists, and let me mention a few of them here: Johannes Haas, Johann Jacob Land, and Henry Marchand. They experimented cultivation of cocoa from 1858 to 1868. The missionaries grew cocoa seedlings brought from the Americas, specifically Cape Palmas and Suriname, and they also experimented other exotic crops such as banana and coffee. The missionaries were frustrated with many challenges in their early attempts to cultivate cocoa in Akuapem. That is, after settled in Akuapem. They actually moved to Akuapem in 1835. And they first arrived at Osu. The Danes were then ruling that stretch of Ghana, and they came to the inner part of Akuapem where they settled their stations and later spread to the other part. So they were experimenting not only cocoa, but they were experimenting other crops. Okay. Then this experiment actually meant a lot to them. In fact, when you come to right now, the experimental farm, you will get traces, and you will also see some of their buildings and many of their things that they try to be put together. You will see traces of them here. Some of the missionaries are even lying here. There's a cemetery here that you will see them here. So some of the trees also grew, but they were not able to bear fruit. So these were some of the challenges. And it was also further reported that there were little ants and worms that caused, quite considerable damage to the growth of the cocoa trees. And we saw the other man, a merchant, for example, reported the fruit of the few trees that survived. And there were also instances where the records, those trees that survived, were also being stolen by some Africans. So they were very, very much disappointed initially. That is what they did. Despite those challenges, they remained quite resolute in their experimentation of cocoa. So year after year, particularly from the 1858 to 1868, the missionaries grew new cocoa seedlings. They applied various medications, and they also see to it that they try to protect their seeds of their farms by fencing it. And they did all this with the view that they want to really equip Africans to also get something through this particular thing. For example, the pioneering mission agriculturalist efforts at cultivating cocoa and other new crops in Ghana is quite commendable here because it brought in several agricultural innovations. They were also able to demonstrate their commitments towards enriching their African brethren. And they knew that the introduction of new crops, in fact, they were very much conscious of this, that cocoa in particular would benefit the Africans, especially the Christians. So right from that, they saw that this will be used to help build their Christian message and also to empower locals to also get money for that purpose. The Basel mission, before the turn of the 19th century and in the early 20th century, they also continued to pursue that vision by actually equipping African Christians and their non-Christian counterparts through agriculture and in general cash crop farming in particular. And so we know that they used their schools, and through their schools, they were able to teach people agricultural practices. They taught them the best practices. They continued to import best seedlings from elsewhere in the Americas, and they sold some species to the African farmers. And they also, through their indigenous agencies, try to embark on, try to encourage Africans, for Ghanaians in particular, to go into cocoa farming. And there are records pointing to the fact that many of those that the initial cocoa, the pioneer cocoa farmers were Christians, and they were able to really support and the industry, and their cocoa actually grew quite well. I can mention Teacher Irene, Okanta, and many others, which time will not allow us to really explore this. But at least there are records to the effect that their contribution actually impacted many people who also succeeded in cocoa farming at the turn of the 19th century and in the early 20th century, where Ghana became the leading producer of world cocoa. So the various contributions actually yielded, the church also benefited in a way from the cocoa wealth, because through cocoa, they also built church buildings and schools and many other things. So in a sense, we can say that the church's development or expansion actually met the cocoa industry. And this is a story that I'm currently following, which later will be published and I'll share with this wonderful community. Let me also say that it is also through their efforts, especially they invited the West Indians to come to Ghana, because in Ekwapim, their initial evangelistic effort did not yield any positive result. But it was believed that though one of Ekwapim acts challenge the mission, white man's religion is Christianity. So if you think that Christianity is really a black man's religion, why don't you show us Africans or people with dark skin who are also Christians? So that made them embark on a journey to the West Indies, and they came up with some brethren from Jamaica. And many of these Jamaicans who came were also agriculturalists, and they also introduced cocoa and really expanded on agricultural industry in Ghana, introducing new crops, which really helped the farmers as they were expanding to the other parts of the country. You know, cocoa, like crops like cocoyam and many others were really introduced by these West Indians, okay? And that was very, very supportive. Again, let me also say that as a result of the Basel Mission's contribution, they boost cocoa trade because they were the first to send Ghana's cocoa abroad. And so thereby linking them to the money market, and people began to get money, and that really served as a motivating factor, encouraging many people to go into cocoa farming. And so the cocoa trade was really actually initiated by the Basel missions. Now, Tetteh Quarshie. Many of us in Ghana here actually believe that we are not aware with the initial Ibadah Asap related, but we know Tetteh Quarshie was also a product of the missions, because he was trained as an artisan, a blacksmith, and he was with the Basel mission, was trained at Osu. But later, you know, the whole of the West African, sub-Saharan Africa, it was the Basel missions who introduced artisanship. There was a school that they were training people. So they gave opportunity to quite a number of Ghanaians who were the best of artisans on the continent. And so they were traveling around. And I think Tetteh Quarshie had opportunity after his training. He went to this place, Fernando Po, and in coming back, he came with cocoa. But I believe that probably he had really known the market value or the importance of cocoa before even. That is why, let me use the word, he smuggled some of these seedlings, which were also a different variety, and they brought it in for when he came. He had an experimental farm at Mampong Gapim here, and we are told that he actually prepared the seedlings and he sold it to many Ghanaians. But the records, some of the mission records state that he was actually extorting, the prices were really on the higher side, and he was being accused of extorting farmers. And so that really brought in the colonial powers to also come in and see how they can also support in that area. But it also on record that even before Tetteh Quarshie, there were other ministers of the gospel. Reverend David Asante, for example, he died in 1892, and he was the first Black Basel mission trained, where he was sent to Basel, trained, and he was sent here as a missionary. Whereas his compatriots were seen as it were, agents. He was treated like the end of the expatriate missionaries because he was trained there and brought here purposely for the missionary activities. And people like him, they took a land, they acquired a land at one Konko. Konko is not all that far from the Kwapem Ridge, and they cultivated cocoa and other pioneers. So in other words, the records is like David Asante's earlier attempt was around 1864, before Tetteh Quarshie. Tetteh Quarshie's first attempt was around 1878, 1879. And so the point is being made that there were others who also contributed, but because those people, probably the records did not capture some of the activities. And most of these earlier Christian ministers were giving the seed for free to the Ghanaian farmers. There were also records indicating that the colonial government also played quite significant role in the spread of the cocoa industry in Ghana. And the one name that comes to mind is the Governor Branford Griffith. He actually played a role in laying the foundation of the Gold Coast cocoa industry. And his son actually debunked the claim that Tetteh Quarshie is the sole founder of the cocoa industry in Ghana. In fact, when you look at the January 12, 1929 edition of the West African magazine, there's an article that his son, Sir W. Bradford Griffith Jr., actually put in the contribution of the father to the cocoa industry. According to the young Griffith, his father, Governor Griffith, actually imported cocoa pods from Sao Tome to Ghana, and he also made sure that he prepared a number of seedlings for Ghanaian farm and distributed it among Ghanaian chiefs, and even he gave some to the Basel Mission as well. And that was done at the Ebre Botanical Gardens. And it was from this place, a number of nurseries were actually, and as a result, seedlings were now in abundance for Ghanaians who are actually interested in spreading this new cocoa industry. Governor Nathan also partly contributed, because it's on record that he encouraged Africans to go into cocoa farming, and because cocoa farming, he found it to be very rewarding. And he did this whilst he was on his traveling tour to other parts, to the parts of the country. The colonial administrations even benefited as well as Asante was that time not part of the colonial They also hands on infrastructural development like the railway, the ferry services, and they also revolutionized agriculture and trade. And that also affected the cocoa industry, especially the transportation of the products. Before, there were human carriers that were carrying these, but the introduction of this railway system and that thing also in a way facilitated, even though there are scholars who believe that these were accidental. But anyway, the fact remains that it was done, and that also revolutionized the cocoa industry and agriculture in general. Now, we also see that cocoa thrives on the tropical forests. And if you look at the cocoa craze at the time, you see how the colonial authorities came to the scene, a number of forests were reserved. And for me, that also actually in a way sustained the industry. Because if they had not really put up those restrictions, probably we will not be seeing cocoa today. And for me, the colonial deserve to be also appreciated, even though there are Afrocentric, some African scholars who may disagree with some of these observations, and they may come up with very sharp criticisms of the colonial. I might say they exploited the system, but it also in a way, they also contributed in the spread of the cocoa industry in the country. There's and many other more under that particular point, but they also use cocoa money, especially Governor Guggisberg, to actually embark on many of his native policies, which actually transform this country. But that notwithstanding, I will personally give the credit to the Ghanaian cocoa farmer. Okay, much as all these contributions are. So had it not been the Ghanaian farmer and their determination to to succeed as farmers, because most of the places that they went to farm were places that missionaries could not go. Missionaries, Western missionaries could not go. European presence in the coast, they themselves were not in the hinterlands. They did not go. They used rather Ghanaian mediums to really reach out to their compatriots who were so. It is a sense in which we can say that the industry was purely an African initiative. And they were able to really spread it because even though some incentives were provided by the colonial government, by the missionary enterprises, which were all good, but had it not been the determination of the Ghanaian farmer to really succeed, I don't think we will be where we are today, celebrating Ghana's cocoa and chocolate, or talking about chocolate hazard. And so, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because Ghana's cocoa, and the records are abound, and which I cannot take it all, but there are a lot of the body of evidence pointing to the fact that many of the farmers were actually determined to add value to their life. And those who were able to really do that, they really went through many hardships. I can describe it as untold hardships. And they were not disappointed by whatever they went through because they have to pass through thick forest. There was nothing like transportation. They have to find space. When I went to the field, a woman recounted how they went to one of the areas and they said the whole place was better and they were sleeping under the trunks of big trees. He said they were sharing the space with wild animals. He has said that he was a living witness to see how a certain man, an elephant, took the man because the elephant thought that the man was coming for the baby, and that was the end of this man. So many of them died. They really went through many struggles. They walked by foot, human portrait, very long distances, all in search of land for cocoa. And yet, many a time when we are telling cocoa story, the contributions of these people we are silent on them. The role of the cocoa farmer, and I can use my personal story. My father, as I told you, was a cocoa farmer, and his cocoa farmer actually spanned in about 4 regions in Ghana. And through his cocoa legacy, he bequeathed something that today Ghana and the world is benefiting. Because he was so much determined in giving the best to his children, he made sure that he went into farming. His initial effort was that once he goes into the farming, he will get the proceed, then he will cater for the children. And so the children will participate in this farming activity, and at the end of the process is spent on us as well. This effort has yielded some results. Today, in my family, as a result of the cocoa industry, I can proudly say that we are really well positioned because of the toil of my father's cocoa sweat. My father bequeathed to this nation and to the world to the extent that some of his children has gone as far as studying for postgraduate in medical science at Johns Hopkins University in Ghana here and many other places. So the point I'm making, there were many other farmers like that who have really benefited, have contributed to the growth of this nation as a result of their modest money that they earn through the cocoa. So when E.T. Mensah says that cocoa Ghana, I think I agree with him, but I will give the credit. Many people don't know how cocoa is cultivated, the challenges that they go through. We talk about the inequalities and all those things. But you see, for me, the narrative starts from now. It's about time we need to really dig deeper and unearth for ourselves the contributions that these people have given to the world through their sweat and how they've been able to sustain an industry that many people's lives are connected. There are so many lives, both international and multinational organizations. When it comes to Ghana, I've already related to you how some of these people, how the nation literally depend on cocoa for survival. And so, I was the chocolate indeed has a name, but the name starts with us trying to dig into our roots and trying to really appreciate the role that these farmers also played in bringing the cocoa story to where we are today, rather than focusing on the very few that we have already given recognition, the likes of Tetteh Quarshie and the missions and all those things. But I think that it's about time we need to tell that story for the world to know that behind chocolate, there are many people. It's the sweat and toils of money. And I believe what is this fair trade and Africanua and my brothers who are on this platform are all for. I pray that the Lord sustain us and take us to wherever we reach. And at the end of the day, we'll all celebrate and indeed say that chocolate has a name. God bless you for listening.
Thank you so much, Leonard. It's just beautiful the way you wove that story, and indeed, chocolate has a name. It's just a lot of things right now. You talk about what cocoa means to the farmer, to the market woman, to the politician. You know, I mean, political season in Ghana, you've got to tell your chocolate story and tell it very well, your cocoa story. You need to amass votes. And it also brings to mind a journey that Judith has embarked on not long ago to Tarkwa Breman. And she gets to this place and she's shocked. She said the village is in the forest, it's in the thick of things. And you recount the story of a woman who talks about an elephant, you know, picking somebody and that person is gone. And these many names that we need to honor today. And for me, chocolate has a name will always be a personal story. A lot of people who went to school like me in Ghana in secondary school would have paid school fees. I did not, purely because my grandmother was a cocoa farmer. And at the time, there was a government initiative that children and people related to cocoa farmers by blood were not going to pay fees. And I did not pay any tuition fee for secondary school. Why? Purely because my grandmother was a cocoa farmer. And the claims of who brought cocoa to Ghana is interesting. Somebody's claiming for their father. And we know the story of Tetteh Quarshie when we go to school. And so coming back and hearing these many people that we ought to honor, I just wish to say thank you. And also you said, when E.T. Mensah says, cocoa, ye Ghana, Ghana, ye cocoa. Yes, I've been somewhere to talk about cocoa and I've referred to Ghanaians as the indigenes, and someone has said, no, Ghanaians are not. But the 14th of March this year, Ghana would have grown cocoa for about 130 years. Truly, Ghanaians are the indigens. At some point, Ghana supplied the world with nearly half of its cocoa. So Ghana really, and Ghanaians are the indigens. And I'm happy for spaces like this where we can own the script and change that narrative. Why? Because chocolate has a name. Tonight, I'm pleased to also welcome a farmer who's joining us from Tarkwa Breman. And this is a village school somewhere in Ghana, Western region, where we are piloting our project, where for the first time, children in cocoa growing communities will go to school, learn English, maths, and science, and at some point, learn cocoa processing and its value addition. I'm just going to ask him to introduce himself and share his thoughts with us. If you have any questions or comment, please keep it in the chat. We'll be back. Joanna will go through the chat, and then we'll go back to our speaker to answer some of those questions, and then we'll call the session to an end. Thank you very much indeed for being such a great presenter, and to all of the community tonight for your active participation. Eja obati yenka na ene African ni one fair trade busia ene yesia ha ye twetwe ye ho nkomo sene Ghana enya ni cocoa na megidi se Bismarck nso akyerɛkyerɛ woniam ni mu bebre sene na presentation ne koso no enti samre mesre se wo so wo asɛm bi a pese wo kyema amanfo na bibia wo so tie na bibia hye wo kran ebia na wo so asua bibi foforo bi na wo so wakyɛ ama amanfo ate enti samre de meto ama na wo bibia wakyɛ ama amanfo.
Ilasi se ene dey so atunsa afre mi se no emrana imedi kitamo epano kuku bi meje ho e frame John Benetton say jitua mi Tarkwa Breman enya ntie edioso enum efi se kuku bi meje na mbapa owo mi hu se oye le dimeti no e ma me so midi nechi eye kuku dimedi no ti sabre ya me nya ntie edioso ni no eye dima midi ya ni kuku dimedi no e class me wo mi se dima no eye de so no mu ya de makuafo de se di ni se ahokyere ewu mu bi eni se edu baby no anache se nyoma nka ese ekrafo yinya na yedi di enduma bi ti se neuro fertilizers ne nyoma bia e ka ho be bo ayen ama medi na koso ama yen no yinya ne sa ga eni di kebese se bra Africa renew a Tarkwa Breman krum hanmo na wonya pese ebe kuku chocolate ede emaye kwalawo krum hanmi no kebe ye ni jebebre se nam sa kwanya no so ebe na ye kwala no so kra na ye fiechire no oye panyina obu se sa kuku mano paso di ewu miti no onnane enko amanoni anase se okope abrabugi na wabo na onunso enansa chocolate yina media eba Tarkwa Breman ekuruma no etume akakuri mu na abo ama ekuru nso no etumpon eniti ene se no edi nkita ho a aka mesre se mo ba ya de na mabobua yenkwale yi kambobua ye ekwafo so a yedi ma no se dia mo benya beans ni bi afi yenchen na mo di afi dwumadi na se se dia yenkofa enfiri mia bi ma mo dwumadi nso no enye dine eba mo.
Yeah, that's it. Quite simply, he's incredibly elated that we would even consider piloting the project in Tarkwa Breman. He's 75, and for the most part of his adult life, the only occupation he's had has been a cocoa farmer. His parents were cocoa farmers. He was born in Tarkwa Breman, and he is a cocoa farmer. He feels that the initiative of Chocolate Has a Name brings a lot of hope, because young people might see a future in cocoa farming. But he also says, as much as you're coming to prepare the way and a future for the young people, do not forget about the farmers, because we need to be able to supply the beans for the project to be sustainable. So we're incredibly honored to have him. He's done a short video just sharing his thoughts about the project, and we shall play the video as the session comes to an end. Quite briefly, Joanna, what's going on in the chat? Who is saying what and how are they saying it?
Lots of people really enthusiastic about Leonard's talk in particular. We've got Cheryl saying this is really interesting. Everyone should know this history. Thank you so much, Leonard. Isaiah saying, I love this narration. Honestly, thank you, Leonard, for this inspiring story. And Cheryl saying, absolutely. I said that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Leonard. Nanesi said, a truly splendiferous lecture, Mr. Leonard Opoku Agyemang. Isaiah again, wow, Adele speaking Ghanaian language tree. That is so beautiful. And then Miss B, brilliant summary, Mr. Leonard, and wonderful initiative, Adele. It's really exciting to learn so much. Wow.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and the 21st of this month is World Mother Tongue Day. So we really need to be able to speak some of that language and speak it very well. The elders have said a child who cannot speak his mother tongue will never know the route to his father's house. So thanks for sharing. Leonard, you have brought in that sort of nuance we've always asked for, the part of the story that we really did not know. Because when we've gone to school, it's been Tetteh Quarshie, and truly Tetteh Quarshie's role, as you said, is quite significant. But behind that name are many, many, many names and stories that need to be told. You are still ongoing with your research. What is your message to the community this evening, and where does the story continue?
Well, my message to the community, and thank you once again, Adele, and to Joanna, and to your cherished viewers and listeners at the same time. My message to the community is that, you see, cocoa is our heritage. Whether we like it or not, it will continue to be part of us. And going to the field, in fact, my heart bleeds. And I'm afraid a time will come, my granddaughter or my grandson may not even have to see the cocoa pod because of the increasing rate at which galamsey activities is taking over these and other environmental concerns that is really taking over the industry. And I think that we should all express some concern and make a lot of noise about it, and see to it that we have to preserve this cocoa heritage for ourselves and for the future of our children as well. And I think that as we do this, it is really going to help us a lot. Because now that chocolate has a name, you are having an initiative to really add value to our cocoa with Tarkwa Breman as a starter or as a starting point, which I believe that is a good initiative. But again, if we don't also think of sustaining the industry, I'm afraid that this move will probably be a waste. So I think we should really use this platform and another big platform to also express interest in many other factors that are militating against the industry. But I also make this personal appeal to fair trade. They are really doing an amazing task, but most of their activities are centered in the global north. They do discussions. I think they should be more interested in dialogue and coming down to actually pinpoint it in, so that they also get to appreciate the realities on the ground. Rather, and also I was personally happy to see Joanna coming to Ghana to see things for herself. So I believe that they need to promote the North-South dialogue so that at the end of the day, we are all able to appreciate that bigger reality so that we're able to really defend that chocolate really has a name, and it has many and counter narratives. And that story, we should all be on the same space. What is the Ghanaian farmer saying? What is the Ivorian farmer saying? What are the things affecting against? These are all issues that should be of interest to any player in the industry. And as we come join forces together like this, I strongly believe that we'll be able to make a strong mark, and we send a strong signal to people who don't want to sustain this beautiful thing that the Lord has given to this plant. And so we want to eat chocolate. And I want my children to continue to eat chocolate in the future. And if you want to continue experience this, then indeed we should all come together like we are doing and continue to build a strong group. God bless us as we do this. And I believe that we'll be able to go far and sustain the industry. Thank you very much, Adele, and the community.
Thank you, Leonard, for such a succinct message. And I think the community does appreciate your efforts. There are a few questions in the chat. I think people are more interested in your research as well. And Gideon was asking of scholarly articles back in some of the thoughts you've shared this evening. And so, Leonard, if you are happy to share any of your social media links, please do well too, so people can follow your work. I know you're still doing your research. And
yes, currently on the cocoa side, I have a number of published articles, but on cocoa, I don't know if you can see this.
Up a little bit. Yes, thank you.
This is a conference that I participated, and I reflected on my father's cocoa heritage. And so my personal story that I was talking about, you can get this story in this book. It's titled The Golden Pod, Its Religious, Socioeconomic, and Political Impact on the Gold Coast and Ghana. It was edited by Robert Adofenin and Alison M. Howell. Okay, you can get it on Amazon. And you can read, and there are many, many other interesting stories that you also get from this particular. It's an edited volume, and a number of scholars have contributed to this volume. And mine is in chapter 9. It's a 10th chapter, mine is chapter 9, and it's titled The Cocoa Industry in Ghana and the Odyssey of Akusabuku Agyemang, 1939-2011. That's my father. So I've reflected on my cocoa book, and I think you'll find the narrative very interesting. And so you also do read about others. But I'll be coming up with many, many, many publications on cocoa. And as I said, cocoa is up with many, 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 which I'll share with you later as we move along. And now we are a family. We are a cocoa family. Cocoa has brought us together, and I believe I also share with you some of my research findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonard. 1902. I wish to apologize for the delay. And if you came in a bit early waiting in the waiting room, I'm not sure what happened, but it's been a great evening, an eye-opener, and to add that necessary nuance we've always asked for in our story. Thank you all. Thank you very much indeed for sharing the space. Ed will be sharing a video of Mr. Osei, who joined in from Tarkwa Breman. And this, we are going to do a blog. The website is chocolatehasaname.org. Please, chocolate has a name, Joanna, .co.uk.org?
.co.uk.
Chocolate has a name.co.uk. I will be sharing a blog on the session, and we'll be leaving in some of those relevant articles and books and the details. So please do well to check the blog out. And we're inviting you to join us again on the 6th of March. Please do well to join us, make a date. This is the first time ever we're going to have a pod breaking ceremony. My grandmother, her foremothers, and many others before her, as Leonard has shared tonight, will sit around and break the pod. It was a communal ceremony, but really, perhaps not with that much of an intent. On the 6th of March, as we commemorate Ghana's 66th Independence Day, we're meeting here again, lunchtime, between the hours of 12:30 to 1:30, and we are going to partake in a virtual pod breaking ceremony. Should you bring a knife? Should you find your own cocoa pod? I just want you to be here. Please do well. Click on the link, register, save a date, and come and join us virtually to break that pod. Joanna, last words, and then Ed, you can go ahead and share that video. Thank you all. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening.
Yes, it's been wonderful. As Leonard said, we're all part of the same family, and it's really important that we in the global north learn from the farmers, the people that are actually doing the work on the ground, in the ground, with the ground. And it's really important that we continue to talk, because we are one big family. The African Ewe tribe continues to grow. It's wonderful to see.
Thanks, Ed. When you're ready, please do well to share the video, and we look forward to sharing the space once more on the 6th of March, lunchtime, for a virtual pod breaking ceremony. Thank you. Good night.
Pepe soa medri sede mudi kai do ko juma bi e ya dibia juma e yam ma menem papa nyina no omu juma jani dia no nti mesumu se kan kwa papa ene ma me efemu ko juma mu ne e na shemu kran ba me so be wura ko juma mu no and I'm sorry so nti no you say yay every so no ikumu ni nanti eni na no nya opepa se ebe yekua se de be ma Ghana ni kan ko ni puntu so akoso ehwe nsusu ya aba kuku dimeji ni mu no a you say yay papa ma bre so no ana bra ifiase no na one ply fertilizer and as when no ba pe bi afim enti say enka na yitumi enya se da ye hwehwe na ye ni agie ho ene bi mu no asase no asesa enam obadie yumu sakaya ni adi nti no ama ye say enya fi nya mo bi fi ba bia beboa ye wo new ene fertilizer ho amadwedi no so atumi akoyi amaye ayodie kese wunuma ekuafo titiri ya me kase ikura no se yehwe kai bonu dwumedi no ho a enye eho sika ni nya no anamfa so dia aga yesi nya no na ye saka no ebi se nura obeto ene kwaya aban fa so nsu kura na I say we dwumanu bi echinchi no nsa egisken fi with ye saka di who say ayodi ewoyibu a nyoma aban more homodin say bold man ho a at the end of the day no ye calculation na who say yabo a yati nana no a water Breman ikun ha no a omo so afiase na who say kokko dwuma na papa ye nana no mo afiase ye no eni dwumedi a eye mfasode kese edema oman no nti no ebe hye